Supercharged, a podcast focusing on renewable energy and the passion behind the movement. Supercharged is a thoughtful journey through renewable energy sustainability and an integrated lifestyle. Subscribe and listen each week as we chat with thought leaders, influencers, and those who simply choose to live a better way. And hopefully, along the way, you too will be inspired to live supercharged. My special guest today is Luke Cook. Luke, thanks for joining us on Supercharged Green.
Excited to be here, Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Can you share a little bit about Luke with our audience, please?
I'm a husband, a father of two beautiful girls. I'm the founder of a couple of businesses, Fun Locker and Cuppa of Life. My background was in media and entertainment for many years. But yeah, launching Fun Locker and Cuppa of Life is my own business. But I'm also someone that has battled burnout, mental health, and many other different challenges as well. So that is a little story about me, but yeah.
So in a nutshell, I want you to, the first question we generally talk about on this podcast is really around the idea of sustainability, and it's defined in, we have 50 people in a room, we have 50 different definitions. So I'd like to know from your perspective, when you hear that word, what does that mean to you?
For me, it means that we are galvanized by an understanding of the environment around us and how it feeds more than just what we see. It feeds our energy, it feeds everything around us. And so for me, sustainability is understanding the world and appreciating what this world has for us and keeps us going.
So if we've all had to wrestle with this at some point in time in our lives. So when you've looked at this space, I mean, it would just be really easy to just kind of go with the flow and say, what does this mean? It means I'm going to recycle. It means I'm not going to, I can make a list of the things I'm not going to do, a list of things I am going to do. But at a base level, if you had to kind of look internally, what would be kind of the driver internally in you? What's your why behind the whole idea behind how does this balance? And as you look at the environment around you?
Many people think that they can't make a difference, but we, in our homes are our own world, and our own world is our own choices. What we take in internally, whether it's the packaging of food or the using of composting or whatever it may be, to then what we also do outside in the community as well. So for me, it's the day-to-day practices that you instill to know that you are making a difference by the choices that you're making in your own home.
I was listening to another interview on, where the guy was just talking about the idea of being around the green, like green and tech intersection. And he said, the battle is not, you've got people for sustainability and those against it. He said, nobody's inherently against, taking care of the planet. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, how can I destroy the surroundings around me? But it's more nuanced than that. So when you look at your business, what's the social good aspect, or what's the environmental impact that you have to consider when you are looking at, like your triple bottom line?
For us, it's pretty simple, in all honesty. Like we run a virtual cafe called Cuppa of Life. So we're probably the only cafe that's got the lowest carbon footprint in the world, in all honesty. But
you win the race.
for us, with Cuppa of Life, is all about interviewing guests like what you do and educating people around different topic areas, sustainability being one of those. So for us, it's more about the learning that we provide through our guests, that we see the biggest benefit for us as an organization, because the rest of our operational arm is very minimal from that carbon footprint and what we're doing. And, whether that's also around how we're also giving back to certain charities like, Planet Ark and all those other ones through donational elements that we include in our conversations. Or there's a buyback scheme happening in Australia at the moment with one of our partners called Half Cut. And this bloke is literally half cut. He's got half a beard. And he,
Absolutely. I saw that.
yeah, his name's Jimmy Halfcut, and we've got a session coming up with him shortly around buyback processes for our Indigenous community and buying back the Daintree and giving it back to our Indigenous cultures for them to preserve and create new commercial models for them as well, and give back to our local Aboriginal and Indigenous communities here in Australia. So for me, it's about the impact that we're having via the conversations that we do.
Yeah.
That is the most vital thing for what we stand for here in Cuppa of Life.
I mean, I don't want to make light of that in any way, because that there's a leveraged kind of exponential effect that, around, the whole networking, effect that you've got around a Cup of Life. But tell me about Fun Locker.
Yeah, so prior to COVID, Fun Locker was a live events and experience business. We did rewards, loyalty, and a gifting app that we built that would match experiences to people's interests, and then companies could reward people with things in life that they actually love. So whether that's standing on the field with your favorite football team, or going to a unique restaurant dining experience. So personalizing the values of the individual if they reach the values of the business. Everything in it, though, was experiences based. And when COVID hit, our business stopped overnight. We had all our revenue pulled pretty much. Our 400 plus suppliers shut their doors, and we were left scrambling in a heap, in all honesty. At that point in time, I didn't really know what to do or where to go, because I was fully invested into the app, and I mean, fully invested my own money, everything into it. So there was a challenging period of a couple of weeks there where I was not in a good state at that time.
So how did you kind of walk through that transitional period, and is that what birthed Cuppa of Life? Was it out of that experience?
Totally was, mate. Whilst I landed on the floor, I was looking up, I suppose, and I knew that I still had to keep on fighting, right? Not knowing when COVID would finish, if it even will finish. Something had to be done. And I was walking up to the coffee shop, my local coffee shop, one day, and I started thinking about what's the biggest challenge in the market at the moment. And whilst COVID was the major thing hitting the headlines, I was more worried about the mental health and well-being of people out there, including myself. And I thought the only way I could get out of that is to have conversations and know that we're still connected, even though we feel disconnected as a society at that present time. So walked back from the coffee shop and called our head of experience, Jill Kovitz, who's also part of the business. And I just said to her, I said, let's just help people start their day with a dose of positivity and inspiration. And Cuppa of Life was born from that conversation, where we started connecting with our experts, personalities, and incredible storytellers that we've got access to. And the momentum started, where we opened up our doors every morning at 8:30 here in Australian time. And people started to join, and the feedback was exceptional from day one.
Now, was this really aimed at people that say maybe prior were working, in a brick and mortar office space, and now they're working remotely, and now they're kind of isolated, and there's certainly mental health issues with isolation and the dramatic change around COVID? Was that really kind of the target audience?
It was anyone, mate, in all honesty, like anyone who just felt like they just needed a boost of energy. So yes, predominantly most of them were, we reached out to our corporate partners and they invited their employees along. We didn't charge anything at the start. This wasn't money. It wasn't a money maker for us. This was as much for me and Jill as it was for the people tuning in all honesty. And we treated it in a very authentic space, but, always with a smile and always with vulnerable conversations, sharing emotions, and giving people tips and understandings around what they can implement today. That was its primary purpose when we first launched. But yeah, we've got people tuning in from teenagers all the way through to 80-year-olds. So yeah.
A lot of times when we're talking about sustainability, mental health is not even in the equation or in the conversation, but I can see that there's so many intersections between social good and mental good. And I mean, I was like I mentioned off camera, I was watching another interview that you had done, and you briefly touched on, kind of that transitional time and how difficult it was for you. But you did something during that time that really stuck in my mind as I was listening to that. I think you said that you and your wife really kind of took an inventory of the things that, you know, were triggers or were indications or red flags around burnout. Can you touch on that just a little bit? Because I thought that was such a great point you made.
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times in my life, in all honesty. So the first time was when my first job was lightning Luke on the streets of Sydney, handing out free cans of Coke and doing live crosses on the radio, right? That was my first ever job. I loved it. I was always progressed through the ranks very quickly. Every time someone left as my boss, I took their job. It was always like that natural progression.
Yep.
All of a sudden, I found myself in a role that I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to be there. I was sales director of a media organization, getting drilled on how good is your next month.
Yep.
And I lost every part of me that is around creativity and connection because it was too much about the money signs. And that's, I realized that money didn't equal happiness at that point. I was at a really bad state at that point where, there was tons of things that were appearing in who I was. And that's when the first time my wife and I sat down and she acknowledged it, as did a mate of mine who gave me a serve over the phone one day who said, you need to stop. What's going on here? And we sat down and we started looking at what we defined as our red flag, my red flag list, those things that are not true to me, whether it's, short in conversations or feeling what's the word? Not unwanted, but not achieving.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a little unmotivated. Yeah.
Unmotivated. Crying some mornings. And that was a real shock to me to see all those red flags. Now, that red flag list is still with me today. And there was moments throughout the start of COVID that a lot of those red flags were appearing again. And, I never cover off all 10 of those red flags. I might have 2 or 3 going at any one time, and that's okay.
Yeah. They just can't get in the high 7s or 8s.
Yeah, and that's right, which, there's days that it is in the high 7s and 8s. It's more the consistent days that is the issue. So that red flag list is one of those things that I think, a lot of people bottle things up inside and they don't necessarily note down what's going on. And I think that noting down process with someone that does not judge you, does not, whatever it may be, is a good process to go through. And it's an honest process to go through. And I think, if people are struggling out there, obviously seek support, which we always say, but it's a good starting process to just get things out on paper.
Right. Absolutely. I love it. You briefly touched on, you said you had a mate that called you. I think in the other interview, you said I think the American expression might be, he got in your grill.
It was something that
I've never frontal attack.
I've never had someone talk to me like that in their life. They used every swear word in the world, raised voices, and it was more just a shocking moment of, mate, what are you doing? Why are you so worried about where your life's going and not knowing where it is? Like, you're so talented. Like, get a grip of yourself. And it's not that other people weren't saying that to me in other ways, but sometimes it takes a person that you respect in not outside of your circle, in your circle, but there's someone that that you respect, and it just hits home, and it's like that final hammer hit on the nail. That you just go, okay, something needs to change.
I highly respect your story, and I really appreciate you sharing that and kind of drilling down in those spaces that can be very uncomfortable. But I'm curious, when you said you've done some like podcast hosting as well. So tell me, when you talk to people that have been in kind of the green space or the sustainability space, what are some really key takeaways that you've learned as you've had these conversations with other people that are pretty influential in this space?
There's been really a few very interesting stories. One was by a lady by the name of Dr. Jonica Newby. Her perspective is, what is the emotional impact on an individual when they're talking about climate change? Like that, to me, I found a very interesting discussion, because not many of us consider especially those that are very passionate about sustainability and climate change, what that emotional impact is on you internally.
Yep.
when you're seeing things happen and all that type of stuff. So I found that discussion different to what most would be.
Right.
Other people, we've got a guy here in Australia called Costa Georgiadis. He's half hedge, half man. He's got a beard as long as his body.
Yep.
And what I love about Costa is he just simplifies it. Like there's a lot of buzzwords around sustainability. Most people who aren't necessarily so involved in it just flies over their head because it's not drilled down simply into what are the simple action steps that you can do today that make that difference. So I think for me, it's simplifying what you can do. The other one was Dr. Tia Kansara, who's very big in the sustainability space. She was talking about, I just had a mental blank. I had it and I lost it. She was talking about, oh, sorry, mate. I just lost my thought of train then. If it comes back, I'll let you know.
You just did that to make me feel better about the mental lapses that I have during the day. So yeah, it's you're trying to share the pain.
I'll share the pain with you. No problem. I'll remember it. It'll come back to me soon and I'll bring it back up.
Yeah. So generationally, what have you seen? Like, do you have kids?
Yeah, I've got 2 kids. I've got a 3-year-old and now a 5-week-old. So
okay, well, they're a little young, but I mean, when you kind of look at the different generations and how they view this whole discussion around green and sustainability, what do you see are kind of the differences and like what's the transition been from, say, the generation before you to your generation and maybe the one right after?
Well, the generation of me was hardly ever brought up throughout the whole period of time. It's only really been, I suppose, in the last sort of 5 years that, I've started to educate myself in this area in full transparency. The generation coming through, though, we're hearing it a lot from the businesses that we're working with that the next generation are very focused on working with businesses that are making a positive impact in the world. Whether that's through sustainability or other elements around diversity and inclusion, which forms under cultures, which is also sustainability, or mental health practices, whatever it may be. They're very much more conscious around the businesses that they want to associate with, whether it's mainly with the businesses that they're working for, but also the businesses that they're buying from. I suppose there is a lot of talk out there. I suppose with the younger generation, it's more the actions that I'll probably are still wanting to see. What are they doing around that area? Are they're talking the talk? Are they walking the walk? Or are they still buying consumable goods? Or are they true to their word? So I think that's interesting. I think I love where the world is heading around this, but I think there's everyone's got an opinion now. And I suppose that is probably going to be the biggest challenge moving forward is how do we galvanize connection and conversation appropriately where people are able to be vulnerable about not knowing without being judged. And so for the future generations, my hope is that connection through conversation is continued and not just assumption around certain areas. So yeah, that's my take.
Man, what a way to wrap us up today is, as you were kind of painting the mental picture about, the different generations. I remembered we used to live in the Middle East for a couple of years and I'm not going to pick on the country name because I still have a high degree of affection for that country and the people there. But there were so many plastic bags and, plastic sacks flying around that it was the joke was that's the national flower of the country they were in because there was so many there. But and Luke, I just really appreciate you taking time to chat today and the way you just kind of wrap that up about, the key is conversation. The key is conversation and conversation to understand, not to convince. And
and Kevin, like for me, that is my biggest topic area right now is the power of conversations and ensuring that we build our conversational muscle because we have never been more connected, as in social media, emails, all that type of stuff, but we're only seeing things at face value. As relationships, we've never been more disconnected because we're missing that true connection between individuals, especially during the COVID period, that face-to-face contact, that ability to just sit down and just have a conversation. That is a big passion point for mine, because I think that solves a lot of challenges that we're going to be foreseeing, not only in areas like sustainability, but more importantly, our youth mental health, which is the suicide rates are on the rise big time, especially here in Australia. And we're not teaching our kids how to build their conversational muscle, and that scares me.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And as we wrap up today, you just left me with the thought that, you know, we've never been more connected and disconnected at the same time. Yep. You know, the way that we have the electronic opportunity, but yet we don't actually engage at a deep level very often. And I encourage our listeners.
Pose a question to everyone that's going to listen to this. When was the last time that you saw a phone call come through and you let it go to message back and you never called that person back?
Yep.
If that happened, it's my biggest bugbear. Hey?
Today, yesterday.
You don't know what's on that other line. Yep. You don't know what's on that other line. Yep. And also might be a business chat. Start the conversation with, hey, mate, how are you?
Yep.
Where are you going today? What's your story before we get business? Like, how are you feeling? Like, it's simple, yet we let it go through to message bank and then we message people back, or we do something. We don't even call them. That to me is
No, absolutely. And I, you know, for sure. I mean, and maybe don't just stop at their first answer. How are you? Fine. Really? You know?
Tell me more.
Yeah. Tell me just a little bit more about that.
How the kids? How's the family environment?
Yeah.
Let's catch up for a beer or a coffee next time.
Great questions. Great questions. Great conversation just around the whole. I mean, the more I engage with people in this podcast, the more this thing kind of grows layers. It's like an onion. We're unpeeling layer after layer after layer on this whole topic around sustainability. And Luke, where's the best place to find more about Cuppa of Life online?
Yeah, so just go to cuppaoflife.com. On there, you'll be able to see all the programs and initiatives that we create, whether it's sustainability series or mental health series or whatever it may be. Engage with our conversation by joining our community, which is a subscription fee. And in the next few months, we're really going to supercharge what we offer. But stay tuned for that.
And that wasn't even a paid plug for him to use the podcast name in his little tagline there. I mean, and thanks for joining us on Supercharged Green. It's been a great conversation. Have a great day, mate.
Thanks, Kevin. Cheers.